Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a wonderful Monday. If you told me that I'd be producing, filming, editing, and publishing 2 YouTube videos in the same day 6 months ago, I would have called you crazy. But here we are, and what a pleasure it is. Today, I have for you my team selection and solving your problems in a condensed version, as you can imagine, given time constraints, but mainly just because I addressed as much as I thought I could in the Everything You Need to Know video, and then I thought I'd give a bite-sized version of the problems that you have and solving them. It'll be an interesting video because you'll get a new transfer plans. You'll get one transfer that some of you will know about, some of you won't, and then you'll get the other one on top. We'll have a little bit of discussion about captaincy because I've probably slightly changed my view since Everything You Need to Know video. And from there, we will kick on onto the game week, and I shall see you very shortly afterwards. But without anything else needing to be said, apart from the fact that 39.6 of you percent of you who watch regularly have not subscribed, so if you could press the button because we're so close to 5k subs, hopefully we can do it today. I'm thinking we can do it today. That would be absolutely magnificent. Now that nothing else needs to be said, let's get into the video. We are taught and told that all eras come to an end, and Cell's supremacy certainly has, and the reign of Sanchez supremacy is certainly underway. With a 7-pointer at home to Aston Villa and only one save away from generating a bonus point to make it 8, I am delighted with my keeper as of now. I was less delighted this time a few days before the last game week deadline because there were rumours floating about him getting dropped. However, following a very, very solid performance against Aston Villa, there's categorically no way you can drop him after that. Well, not in my opinion, at least. Not no way, but it's a very low probability. And as such, going forward, I'm really happy with him. He's not in the solving your problems section, so I will touch on him here because some of you had some questions about him. I've seen people ask, should I make this transfer? Should I go from Sels to Sanchez? Should I shift from someone else to Sanchez? Should I get him on wildcard 14 ahead of Verbruggen? Look, I think, as I spoke about yesterday, as Praz put it so well, this is not the period where you want to make these luxury transfers at such a high frequency. For example, I had a comment on my last video where someone was asking about a transfer, and it was the most luxury transfer you could think of. Also, it's super high risk, and I think if there's ever a time to do it, this is probably the worst time to do it. That doesn't mean it's not going to work. It's just going to work at a lower frequency. And so here, if you can just play Cells this week and you have other problems elsewhere or other upside opportunities to capture, go ahead, especially given there's no Tyler Dibbling, Flynn, Downs, Harwood, Bellis. They'll probably struggle, Southampton. And then in terms of them being able to create chances whereby he can accumulate, or Chelsea will concede shots whereby he can accumulate saves, that's probably going to happen again at lower frequency. And if we do, there's a decent chance that, like, if they make one good chance, they score, and then there's no saves for him to have otherwise. So if you don't have him, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world at all. You can, by all means, stick with your keeper, and I would have the transfer used elsewhere in a more efficient way. But in isolation, for me personally, I think he's still the best goalkeeper, and I'm very happy with him going forward. In the transfer plans video 2 days ago, I spoke about this defensive unit and how I was not over the moon with it, and it wasn't particularly strong. And that's still the case, and we'll talk about it more in the transfer plan section, whereby I look at potential routes out of one and into another. Gabriel, for me, the best defender in the game. I think Virgil van Dijk and him is pretty close between them, but for me, still Gabriel, the best defender in the game. He's also a little bit cheaper. There's no way I'll ever bench him, so there's not really much point talking about him. The thing with this team here is my decision very much gets in for me this week. Lewis Hall's obviously got Liverpool at home and Salah down his flank, so there's a potential for a yellow card as well, given he'll have to deal with him all game. Salah's a lot stronger than him physically as well. So I imagine he'll give him a rough time, albeit when they're in the 5-4-1, maybe the style of engagement will be not as bad for Lewis Hall as if he was playing for a side like, I don't know, Brentford, where he has to face a lot more transitions than Salah in transition. So he finds himself lost on the bench. I was actually thinking about playing Burgess. I've been impressed by Ipswich and himself as of late. Obviously, a very good performance away at Spurs as well a couple of weeks ago. He's probably got a better fixture than Dunk. I mean, Crystal Palace at home has to be a better fixture than Fulham away, right? Especially given all these games are under the lights. I think that actually makes a huge difference. A lot of you would have gone to Premier League grounds, and the energy in the ground when it's a night is always different. It's always a bit more hostile towards the away team. People always seem to be a bit more up for it, especially compared to like those 3 o'clock games, right, where it's all a little bit more mellow and everyone's a little bit more chilled. So for me, it's not a bad option, but I think I'm going to go with the prowess of the 2 players in the starting lineup. Aït-Nouri, am I expecting Everton to keep a clean sheet? Wolves to keep a clean sheet? Well, maybe, potentially. Like, they have one of the blunter attacks in the league at the moment, Everton. The other thing is, I'm really hoping he plays as a left wing back as opposed to playing in a back 5. I spoke to FPL Blackwolf, who I strongly recommend following on X, and I asked him, do you think they'll play back five. And he said, yeah, after what happened against Bournemouth, it's likely. He did not say that it's definite, so don't give him any hate if it doesn't go that way. But if he's back a left wing back with the positions he's taking up, and it's a good fixture in terms of clean sheet prospects, I have to start him. And then Dunk, I guess it was between him and Burgess. Will Dunk start? That's the question people are going to ask. I saw Hertzler's comments on them. Reading between the lines, thought they were quite positive. I think given he's the captain, one game, right? He doesn't need any more than that to get reintegrated, and he should be back in. Be a tough game as well. So having his leadership away from home, I think will be useful. Am I expecting anything from him? Maybe. I wouldn't say it's the best fixture in the world, and he's not exactly the biggest goal threat in the league compared to someone like Gabriel. So yeah, I'm playing him. The defense is a little bit weak in terms of Dunk, but the other three probably for this week are fine. But some reinforcements will come in down the line, as we will speak about. A few videos ago, I alluded to a playstyle which looked to capture as much upside as possible. Last week, it manifested itself in the form of a Saka captaincy, and this week, it has yet again manifested itself in the form of my midfield. However, in a slightly different form, or forms would be more accurate. I'll start with the West Ham Claret and Blue. Jared and Bowen finds himself in my team for the first time this season, in place of Brian Mbeumo. This is the first time you've had a look at the transfer actually being done. Why have I done that? Well, obviously I touched on this in the transfer plans video. I touched on this on the Everything You Need to Know video. So I'm not just going to regurgitate the same information that I've already viewed out. You can, of course, go and watch both those videos, and the information will be there in more depth. However, a Reader's Digest version, the fixtures are there. One thing I hadn't spoken about previously is I wouldn't be surprised if he plays at 9 at times. Kudus is back, right? His best position is on the right. You can play Somerville on the left. You can play Paquetá on the 10. And then you can play Bowen up top with Souček and Alvarez in a pivot of sorts. That's pretty decent, right? There's a lot of talent in there on the flanks, and Paquetá and Bowen up top. And I think Edson Alvarez is decent at least as well. So I quite like that. And Souček offers you quite a bit in certain areas as well. So I personally like that a lot. I can see West Ham doing quite well there. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's been decent going forward compared to the rep he had at Man United. Emerson's got a lot of quality on the ball. So West Ham can score goals. They can absolutely score goals. And they've had a very tough run to start the season. I would say the fixture difficulty of their first 13 games compared to most, it will definitely be very, very high up in terms of how difficult it was. Now, with these next 5-6 fixtures, he can certainly capitalize. Look at the type of player he is. Last year, in a West Ham side that weren't functioning unbelievably well, 16 goals, 6 assists. He's on 3 goals this season. We've got some catching up to do, and I really would not be surprised to see him do it. So for me, I'm delighted to own Bowen for this period, and it's just set and forget. Don't have to touch all the fundamentals. If not all of them, then most of them will tick. That's fantastic. Salah, I mean, like, what else am I meant to do with Salah, right? Going to be there. Palmer and Saka will speak about more in the captaincy because the vice is on one, the captaincy is on the other. And then the big thing here that some of you guys will be thinking, I'll probably title this section Joao Pedro versus Morgan Rogers, because I know that's a big debate for most of you, is Joao Pedro versus Morgan Rogers and how Morgan Rogers has found its way into the starting lineup. I will not tell you that this is purely football analysis. There's logic behind it, which I will explain. But this is also a bit of a gut feel. And I've been using that at times this season, and it's worked tremendously well for me, and I'm going to continue to do so, especially when the call is close, and I first always look at the intellectual side of things. Okay, what do I really like about this? I've got a feeling that Thomas Frank might not line up with a 5 at the back. I think he might see this Villa side as there for the taking and persist with an aggressive 4 at the back and 44, however you wish to frame it. He's very versatile in what he can play, and it's one of the reasons why he's such a good coach. That type of game is bread and butter for Morgan Rogers. Their midfield definitely is exposed at times with certain systems they play when they play in a more aggressive nature. And given the basketball-like quality of the game, potentially, given the transitional nature of that game and how it will be done at a high frequency, there's probably no one better on the pitch to exploit it than him, especially in the central areas carrying. So I can see him getting in and amongst the returns, specifically the assists. And talk about that going forward and why that's probably a pretty decent thing. But also if Villa can just gain some sense of territory on the pitch, and Brentford are looking to play in a fairly direct manner, and he finds himself stationed relatively high up the pitch. He's got the quality to deliver from there, albeit his final product needs to improve, but I've seen enough whereby I think, okay, I can get a return, specifically a goal, but potentially not at the highest probability like other players, but the opportunity. Okay, so that's the positives attached to him. What are the negatives? Well, I don't know exactly where I expect him to be at. And is this a game where he starts Watkin and Duran so that I don't get him up top? I'd rather get him in one of the wider areas. I think it's actually better for Villa if he plays in one of the wide areas. For FPL, I'm not sure. But there's still the possibilities of returns. And I think this is this is the perfect game, I think, for Villa to get back on track. They won't have to rely on a certain skill set within the team to break down like a deep low block away from home, which could become very frustrating early on. But rather, they're at home, they'll have the crowd on their side at least to start with, and they'll be involved in the game, which certainly suits the team, at least the composition of the team more. I think when Jacob Ramsey comes back in, a whole different dynamic, same with Amadou Onana. But for now, I think this is the perfect game to get them back on track. So, from a stylistic standpoint, I like it for Rodgers, and just in general, the conditions I think it's good for Rodgers. Why does Joao Pedro, who you can't see yet, find himself on the bench? Well, it's mainly because I want to play Rodgers over him. I also would like to capture the upside, given I think most people will play Pedro, and I'm somewhat bullish on Rodgers. Not overly, like I was on the Saka captaincy, somewhat. And the other thing is, I think this will be quite a difficult game for Brighton. I really rate some of the things I've seen from Fulham at home. I think physically as well, this will be a difficult game for anyone to go to, even though Joachim Anderson was out, they still managed to hold Spurs. They don't really tend to concede too many goals. They conceded 3 at the Etihad, which I don't really count because they actually played pretty well. They conceded 3 at home to Villa, albeit the goals they conceded, the Rodgers deflection, one slightly obscure, and then obviously they conceded 4 to Wolves. But even that I see as a bit of a facade because the 2 goals Cunha scored, world class. They conceded a goal right at the end when they were going for one, and the other goal was just normal. The second one was just normal. So for me, I think the defense has been fine, and those 3 games in particular, whilst they don't look great on paper, when you apply some context, it's okay. Also, the goals that the 10 scored against Fulham largely been from outside the box, and I think if you're going to hurt Fulham from that 10 position, it's actually difficult to enter the box, whereby like against other teams, he can find himself in those positions. So maybe he has to leverage his ball striking from outside the box. And I'm not seeing him. I'm sure he's got it in the locker to an extent, but I'm not seeing him display that as well as someone like Cunha. And like I said, I think Fulham, personally for me, going away to Fulham, a harder game than staying at home to Brentford. And for those reasons that I've discussed, alongside the upside as well, I'm playing Rodgers over Joao Pedro. And that's the midfield wrapped up. We'll talk about Saka and Palmer when we get to the captain section. I would say with Joao Pedro that it's close. Like between him and Rodgers, it's close. And maybe I'm making a mistake. Like, Joao Pedro has better minutes. He's got penalties. He probably has better minutes. He's got penalties. He's in better form, I would say. Brighton are in better form than Villa, etc., etc. So there's all those variables, and I completely appreciate them. For me, what I've used as justification outweighs those things. And remember, I did say that I am picking this partly on feel. You will notice that there's been another transfer, and Alexander Isak has left my team. Now, I'd say FPL 101 says these type of transfers don't always work out, and it is super aggressive, and I'm exposing myself to risk. And I would agree in most cases, but here, I think I'm fine to do it. I've gone Isak to Watkins. Brentford at home, for all of the reasons I discussed previously, I really like. He himself has been getting chances at least generated for him, or generating chances himself through brilliant movement and bits of play. He just hasn't really been putting them away. The XG is there. It's probably the first time we had that on this channel in a while. And his finishing just hasn't been that good. I'm telling you, if he'd scored that first goal against that first chance against Sanchez on the weekend, and then with these 2 fixtures, everyone would be like, oh, Watkins. He's also really good on the bonus point system as well. So for me, I think he appears to be a lot better than he is. I was actually looking at Villa's run, right, in terms of their defeats and how they're winless in 7. They outplayed Bournemouth completely, and they just conceded a stupid goal in the 95th minute. One of the games. One of the other games, I think the one after that was the EFL Cup. I automatically discount that because it's just not as played in as serious of a manner, and it wasn't the entire first team. So I'm discounting that. So that's 2 games. Club Brugge, yeah, they weren't great, but for example, like Tyrone Mings come back into the side, he hasn't played in so long, and look at the penalty he gives away. They weren't great that day, but still. Chelsea, it wasn't great from them. That was pretty poor. But we are a better side than them, with all due respect. So yeah, it's fine. They should be playing better, but still. The other 3 games aren't coming to my head at the moment. But when I looked at them, one's Liverpool. They meant they had some chances. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't good, but it wasn't that bad. So I don't think it's as much of a crisis as people may be making out to be. And these 2 games in particular are fantastic springboards for them to get back. This guy is a top player. There's a reason he ripped the league up last year. There's a reason he was in the England squad for the Euros doing what he did when he came off the bench. He's got talent. The conditions are there. Complete differential. The upside of Isak in the next 2 weeks, for me personally, when Isak has Liverpool at home and then Brentford away, I think away makes it a little bit considering he's probably handling some form of an injury, just a little one, and Callum Wilson's there, so reduce expected minutes. I think Watkins is a better asset over the next 2 weeks, and then you'll see in the transfer plan section what I've got planned for him. What I would say to people who are thinking of going here, I imagine your problem, apart from the form of Villa or him, is expected minutes. I don't think he's allowed to be benched. I think he's just too good of a player to be benched. He's had his minutes managed somewhat. For example, he played 78 against Juventus. The international break wasn't too hectic for him. He came off a few minutes, like maybe missed 10 minutes against Chelsea. So his minutes are being somewhat managed. And I think he's fine. Even if I get 160 out of him, 80-80 split, that's fine. Like I get 80-80 out of Jackson. Right? Even Bukayo Saka's been doing like 80-80 splits a lot of the time. Probably less than that as well. So I do think that like extra 10, 15 minutes that people talk about with these type of players is sometimes overrated. Yeah. Jackson, I mean, what else am I going to do, right? Southampton away, he keeps scoring, keeps performing for me. Easy hold. Looking forward to owning. Not unbelievably bullish on him. I always thought the Villa fixture was the best one for him. It happens that he got more out of the Leicester one, even though I think he probably had a little bit less change in that game. But regardless, that's sometimes the way it goes. Not complaining. And yeah, I'm just happy to own him. And having him on Saka on my wildcard was a decision that certainly paid significant dividends. But now let's go on to the captaincy and talk about the two mid. Now, I didn't intend for this to be some great big review, nor was it in your eyes, because as you saw in the Everything You Need to Know video, I had Palmer as my clear favorite yesterday. After I recorded the video, I then edited it, I published it, stayed home for a little bit, and then I went for a walk. And on that walk, I was thinking about the captaincy again. And genuinely, I was thinking that I might have to come back to today and record the team selection video and explain why I'm going for Bukayo Saka captain. So with that in mind, that's how much on that walk my perspective shifted on captaincy, and I got it to be a lot closer. I didn't know Martinez was suspended or injured. I didn't know Kobbie Mainoo's not going to play either. And the more I thought about it, Chelsea are away, Arsenal are home, the Emirates will be absolutely bouncing. Saka, for me, has probably been, not probably, he's been better than Palmer recently. As a footballer, forget FPL and returns, he's been unbelievable. And I was just starting to think to myself, there's so many variables here on top of the analysis yesterday that I actually really like for Bukayo Saka. Kind of checked in with myself, went through it again, and narrowly, and I mean narrowly, landed on Cole Palmer. I was actually a little bit disappointed. I kind of wanted to go Saka again, but I'm sure it's for the best. And I say this because I don't think the gap is as big as I made it out to be yesterday, nor is the gap as big as the percentage differences in the polls. For example, I put one out on X. Palmer had 75% of the vote. Okay, so forget Saka having 25. He didn't even have like 10, I think. For me, it's no way that big. And if I had to captain Saka, if I was forced, I'd be like, okay, cool, no problem. I'd be more than happy with it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to express. I think it's a lot closer than I made out to be yesterday, and certainly it's been made out in the community. There are so many positives associated with Saka. Main thing just being he's just pretty much better than everyone else. And yeah, that's the team. Very much looking forward to it. As you can see, we've had a good start to this season for those of you who are new and well, who are, and hopefully looking to kick on. And given it was a wild card in 12, team value is increasing, well set, transfers are in place, etc., etc. So I'm looking forward to it. And let's go on to transfer plans before solving your problem. Given the transfer of Ollie Watkins was not formally established, I thought it best to devise a new transfer plan and essentially show you what it looks like with him involved in it for certain. So Mbeumo to Isak, and Mbeumo and Isak to Bowen and Watkins. In 15, I'm looking to roll. There's no transfer I need to make. I have double Villa at home to Southampton. I'll have double Chelsea away to Spurs. And whilst we're on the subject, let's touch on it. I put a tweet on X about how going for double ups is risky because you essentially need the team to score significantly more goals, because you can't just assume that the spread of output is going to be contained to your two players and they're competing with the same bonus points, etc., etc. And now I'm likely to have two double ups for 2 weeks, and I completely accept that. I do think, however, the fixtures are there for it, and it's only for 2 weeks, so I'm comfortable doing that. And then, like I said, I'm looking to adopt this playstyle where I really am trying to maximize my upside. And who knows, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe Aston Villa are really poor again, and I bench Rodgers next week. Maybe that's the case. But I'm at least open to the idea because I do see the possibility for returns. And considering Rodgers is really the one who makes it a big deal, right? Because one double up's not that big deal, especially when it's Jackson Palmer and the combination's so good. But when it's Rodgers Watkins, I'm not expecting too much from him because he is, at the end of the day, the seventh attacker. Him and Joao Pedro will always be the seventh attacker when they're lining up, unless I start both of them, which is a real possibility in 15, given Joao Pedro has Leicester away. But then who do I bench, right? So we'll come on to that then. 16, and this was the thing, and this is what I was talking about in FPL 101. Maybe not the thing that they would say to do. I'm going to go Watkins back to Isak. I could go Cunha, who also has Leicester Ipswich or Ipswich Leicester, but I think I'll go Isak for Leicester Ipswich and capture the upside there and then continue from there. I don't mind his fixtures after that. I think he's a decent hold, and I can see some upside to it there. Hopefully by then they're clicking a little bit better, and I can get some returns. After that, it's like Villa at home, and I think that's a good game for him to exploit the transitional elements within that game. So that's what I'm planning to do. 17, roll. I'll have 2 frees, and 18, by the time I reach there, I will have 3 free transfers. Potentially for Erling Haaland, who knows? We'll see how it goes. There are a couple of things to talk about here. Will I need to use a transfer to improve my... Well, I do have that luxury at 17. But my defense from like 16, 17, 18 is actually where it gets a little bit better. It's more so just this week that I'm not in love with it. I don't think it's great in 18 either. It's more so 14 and 18, and then to an extent 15 as well. But in 16 and 17, it's solid. So I probably won't use a transfer there. If I do, it's very much dependent on the cash I have available as to who I get. If I do go to Cunha in 16, because we're going to talk about that, then I can obviously upgrade to, I think I can maybe get to Virgil van Dijk. And if not, you're in right there. Robertson or Gomez, if I fancy. Probably won't. Probably just go to Timber, if not Virgil. Okay. Whilst we're on the subject of Cunha, like I said, he has the same set of fixtures as Isak. The only thing about him is I think I want to trust the more established asset in past years and the better team just for this period. Cunha's really interesting, right? Because I was actually just thinking of going Isak to Cunha now. And given that is the case, he has his own section in solving your problems. Essentially, for my team to facilitate him and Isak, I would have to sell Nicholas Jackson. There's pretty much no route other than that, and I'm not really interested in that. So I will likely have to pick, but at least we can wait till 16 to make that happen. Like I said, this will be a bite-sized version of solving your problems. So let's get into bite-size, BBC bite-size. That unlocks some memory. So menu, let's start with him. I really like it, and I've expressed that throughout the campaign since Wildcard 12 became a thing. I always said that I prefer Semenyo to Rodgers. I really, really like him. I have nothing negative to say about him, apart from the fact that I don't think his ceiling is particularly accessible. It's probably better to say it's not as accessible as high, because I think that makes more sense with him, mainly because of how Bournemouth create their chances. Not really directed specifically for him, whereas with the man on the screen, everything runs through him, so you can anticipate more returns, and his finishing is not elite. So apart from that, the fixtures are great, the price tag is great, he's great as a player, I really like him, and I think it's a great pick. And remember what we spoke about, just because he's 5.6, that doesn't mean he's less valuable than a player who's 7.0. Try and remove that psychological bias that you have from that decision making. I think it makes it a lot easier to assess how good he actually is. Should you take a hit for a defender? No, not in my opinion. I think there have been a few comments where people are like, okay, I want Trent, should I take a hit? I want VVD, should I take a hit? Timber, should I take a hit? And if you have a playing defender, regardless of if it's Ola Aina away to Manchester City, actually that's not the hardest fixture. Let's say it's like Mazraoui, right centre back, not getting an attacking return realistically, away to an Emirates that will be bouncing and an Arsenal that have just slapped West Ham for 5 in one half. That's not exactly the most tantalizing prospect. I'm still playing him because hits for defenders very rarely work. Probably like up 5%. And on top of that, this is the worst season to do it because even if they get attacking returns and a clean sheet, their chances in the bonus system are nowhere near as good as they used to be. So for me, the upside is so minimal. The downside is so big and realistic. Just don't do it in pretty much any case. Should you take a hit for a midfielder / forward? I've seen these type of hits. Haaland out, and then like Saka, Jackson in, Bruno to Saka, a hit for Jackson just in isolation, etc., etc. You have to judge this for yourself. I can't cover every single one of these in this video, but they're all going to be circumstantial to an extent, yes, but more so circumstantial because of how you are as a manager. What is your risk profile like? How willing are you to take on this risk? How do you see this particular player? How do you see this particular fixture going, etc., etc., right? So just try and culminate all of those things. I'm of course here to help you, so just go and watch the other content with regards to the player specifically, and you'll kind of get a gist of where I'm at. For example, do I think you should take a hit to go from Isak to Jackson? Some people have asked me. No. But do I like Jackson more? Yes. Now, if you really like Jackson and you really dislike Isak with what I said in mind, then okay, do it. But I personally wouldn't. Guardiola, I was actually thinking about transferring him in at one point during last game week. I'd hold. Unless he acts as a huge blocker to another asset, I would hold. I think Forest at home is an okay fixture. I think Forest against the better sides usually pack that midfield, make themselves very difficult to beat, and then leverage their transitional threat to an extent, but not as much as they could because they're obviously looking to play with a more compact with midfield and hence select different profiles. Basically, the game is your blueprint. Blueprint. I think Guardiola comes back in the side, has a fair bit of attacking responsibility, and especially if Rico Lewis doesn't play, and then from there, it's not the worst thing in the world. So I'd give it one more, just one more, and then you can see how it goes. Even Palace away in 15. Who knows? Maybe if it goes well this week. Do you need Bukayo Saka this week? I've I've sang his praises for a while now. He's gone, 13, 18. I spoke about him in the captaincy section. Now I think he's so close to Cole Palmer. So I'm obviously very bullish. I would very much like you to have him because I would like you to do well. You don't need him. Same way you don't need any player. You don't even need Mohamed Salah. But it's probably preferable in a lot of spots. And would I be taking a hit for him? Considering you're not going to captain him, the likelihood of me saying yes compared to last week reduces significantly, but I think in certain spots it's okay. For example, Bruno Saka in isolation as a hit. I think I might do it. That's how bullish I am on Saka as a prospect for this week and just in general. And plus, you want to stop losing so much value on him because he's just going up and up and up. So yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. Cunha's fixtures. This is why I saved this section. Initially, I had Cunha's fixtures Everton away, West Ham away. It'd actually be a little bit difficult if they get in the deeper block structure and make themselves difficult to beat. And then Ipswich and Leicester or Wolves, with all due respect, maybe isn't as good as it is for other teams. I'm not sure that Wolves are really that much better than either of them. Especially not Ipswich. Like 4 at the back Wolves, in my opinion, not better than 4 at the back Ipswich. 5 at the back, yeah, okay, they probably are. But if he's going to persist with the 4 at the back, I think Ipswich could take. So that was my initial perspective. However, after Everton just got slapped for 4 at Old Trafford, maybe confidence is down, morale's down, crowd will get on them if they concede an early goal. Maybe it's a little bit better. Given they conceded 4 with a 4 at the back, maybe does shift back to a back 5. And I spoke about that in the transfer plans, how I much prefer him in that role. So my perspective on him has slightly shifted. I'm probably a bit more bullish on him. I was actually looking at bringing him in instead of Watkins and then just saving myself the transfer down the line and getting some money out so I can use it on my defense. But I haven't done that, obviously, as you've seen in the last section. I would just say to be slightly wary of his fixtures. I think they could go either way. Before, I was like, they're a little bit more overrated. Now, I'm a little bit more open. But I do think they can go either way. And again, playing for a team that have some issues, some fairly considerable issues, you're going to have your chance creation dynamics not optimized for your player. I would just say that. I don't think you can be as expectant as people have been in the past of him just going return. For example, at least with Jackson, right, playing in a team where everything's super settled and he has world-class talent behind him, Cunha doesn't have that. He is the talent in the team, the main talent by quite some way. And lastly, we move on to the big man. I think he's a sell. People are looking at captaining him this week. Some people are next. I think it's not crazy, but not far off. Forest is such a good side defensively. Outside of the top 4, and when I say top 4, I mean Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City. That's still my top 4, and I think that will absolutely be the top 4 at the end of the season. Best defense, in my opinion. And with their manager's philosophy, they're always going to be super difficult to beat. With everything going on at the club, I'm not sure this is the instance to try and time the bottom. So for me, especially when he acts as a blocker to the likes of Jackson and Saka, specifically those two, because those are the two differentials that people won't have, who are on fire at the moment and have good fixtures, and it's probably likely to keep going, and they have a lot going for them anyway. I think you could probably get rid of him. And if you're thinking of captaining him, good luck to you. I just don't think. And that wraps up solving your problem. That is all she wrote for Game Week 14's content, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. The comment section has been filled with appreciation, support, and love. So for that, I always am very grateful. And I know I say it a lot, but I genuinely am. Very, very kind of you to take the time out of your day to write a comment. You could easily just like the video, and even that's great because not everyone does that. But the fact that you guys comment, and so many of you in so many numbers, I'm very grateful. So thank you very much. I think it's important to express gratitude. But it'll be an interesting week for sure. I'm looking forward to it. I'm happy with my team. I will actually see you tomorrow because I'm going to upload transfer plans late on Wednesday night. It makes most sense for my team in general anyway. And I think the Thursday spot needs to be filled by another video because the game weeks are coming so quick and fast. Have a wonderful time in the meantime. Make sure to make it a great day. And if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments and like the video.